This is National Adverse Drug Event Awareness Day. I'm with the lovely and talented Susan Morato. Is that how, am I saying your name correctly, Morato?
It depends who you ask. My Spanish father-in-law would say it's Maroto, but Morato,
Moroto,
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 patata,
banana,
potato.
potato, patata. All right, so let's join the conversation, which is already in progress.
And which is really, if you think about it, a little bit deviating from the main thing they usually do, because most of the medical terms have to do with clinical and drug development kind of adverse reaction terminologies, and very much like who at the WHO adverse reaction terminologies and all that. So the MEDRA had been really wonderful in developing this 27 SOC, which is capturing product quality issues. And so right now, if you go to the FDA adverse reaction website, you can actually run an analysis and you pull out all the MEDRA 27 SOC, particularly if you know what they contain. In other words, product quality, labeling, container closure, manufacturing complaints, out of specifications, and there's just a bunch of them. If you pull that out, you can run an analysis and identify the number of adverse event reports. Remember, at this point, there's just no causality. It's just about reports. The reports that have been submitted, that the submitter really thought was related to product quality. And if you remember very well, the FDA Form 3500 has actually failed that they enable consumer and others to report suspected poor quality. And for the industry, the feed alert reporting is mandatory. But that when they experience, when they see out of specifications, they are required to report that to FDA within 3 days, right? So I think there's just a lot that's going on that really helps, that we're beginning to see this data come out, and that how we wish that that is progressing quickly, so that at least we can begin to get those denominator data, be able to now put in efforts in causality determination about them, and then begin to design interventions to address them. But there are other ways of other help that could be there. AI predictive models and tools, as we were talking earlier this morning, ways to integrate and analyze data from multiple sources as much as you can clean them up. And then, of course, machine learning algorithms that could help in determining the likelihood, but as well as predicting chances of experiencing poor quality based on manufacturing capability, or based on even some of the data that come out from FDA on either 483 or inspection findings and all that. And this is very interesting, given that you really want to, double click on prevention as much as is possible, rather than waiting for these events to occur before dealing with them. So the next part of the my talk will really be to now begin to zero into the manufacturing part of things. But before that, earlier in my career, we were working on really just addressing this issue where product quality issues are not immediately recognized in pharmacovigilance. That is part of what patients, providers, industry should be reporting. So the source I referenced, there was a 2009 work that we did and generated some indicators. We modeled that, and it's used in many, many countries. Of course, that was prior before I joined USP. But the point here is it's improved now, and you're getting a lot of pharmacovigilance indicators, realizing that reporting of poor quality products is part and parcel of what that should be, because falsified and substandard products is a subset of that overarching adverse events, adverse clinical events. And why it's not lying entirely within that, within that cycle, is that not all poor quality events will lead to clinical outcome. Some may not lead to clinical outcome, and that is why a lot of them are not often and under-recognized. And so, talking about these reporting of substandard and falsified medicines getting now more and more mainstreamed, I've shown you a few of ways it's done on the left side of the screen. There is this global benchmarking tool where that benchmarks regulatory authority as they progress in their maturity to show that just a quality management system to show how mature they are in fulfilling their responsibility as a regulator. Primary responsibility of timely review and approval of products that really have um, uh, have tremendous benefit risk balance, that would be beneficial to the population, and safeguarding their population from substandard and falsified medicine. That's the primary role of every regulatory authority. And so, in the menu of ways of benchmarking them to understand how mature they are, there is a particular model that deals with vigilance. And so, within that model, there are a battery of metric indicators that measure them to see how they are implementing vigilance. And within that vigilance model, there is aspects that deal with reporting of drug quality, suspected product quality events or reports. Then there is the performance evaluation. So for regulatory agencies that actually have demonstrated that they are functional, some of them aspire towards maturity level 4, or some of them may aspire to become what is called a listed authority, like a stringent agency. That's what most people here will be familiar with. Stringent regulatory authority, which a typical example, or one of the earliest, is US FDA, right? And so as a stringent agency, there is ways these things are addressed, and we can talk about how to strengthen that. And then, as I mentioned, for manufacturers, there's the feed and lab reports that is a regulatory requirement. And interestingly, consumers and consumer reporting is encouraged a lot, same as it is for adverse reactions, the typical adverse reactions. Same it is for any suspicion about product quality, whether it is about a syrup that is leaking, or it's again a tablet that is mottled or friable, or whatever it is. I think there's a great value in encouraging consumers to report this using the FDA Form 3500A, which I think is basically for consumers. And then there is the FDA MedWatch. Another source of data on poor quality drugs is the post-market quality testing, which is a very intentional program that usually require sampling of the products from the market and then testing them according to the monograph or the specifications on which they were approved. And so when that happens, the data coming out of that is really very powerful, because it really collected the product in real life use, tested them to the specifications, and able to establish whether it passed or failed. So for manufacturing, last quickly, a couple of comments about manufacturing, and then see how USP is working in all this. Next slide. Really, the global manufacturing challenges are a lot, and most of them impact on us here in the US. Close to, we all know that about 90% of prescriptions that are filled in the US are generics, and out of that, a lot of the generics are sourced from outside the US, right? And so global manufacturing impacts everyone here. So one of the things that the chart that you're seeing was intended to is coming from a medicine supply map at USP, and is used to describe what we found to be associated with drug shortages or vulnerability to shortages. But it also tells you the story about geographic concentration of the manufacturing that leads you to think about, are we sure about the quality of manufacturing in those places? And so we looked at more than 100 factors and back tested them against established shortage channels like FDA recording of shortages, and as well as ASHP. And we were able to narrow down to 4 key risk categories. One is geographic concentration. And in fact, it's interesting to mention that it's often we think about geographic concentration that our products are coming from India, from China, from other parts of the world. That's true. That's also a risk, a major risk, right? But also, if you have all your light volume parenterals coming from North Carolina, and anything hurricane happens and it clears that out, you also are susceptible to shortages, right? So the geographic concentration, even if the products are manufactured here in the US, there are quality concerns issue, which connects to what we're talking about. That quality concerns comes up a lot. At times you have those issues leading to manufacturers even exiting the market when they have those quality concerns that are pointed out by FDA. Manufacturing complexity. Some of the generics we'll talk about it today some of them are actually complex to manufacture. It's not just that some of them are sterile injectables, sterile generic injectables. There are some that are complex generics that are challenging to manufacture. Then low price and race to the bottom has meant that some manufacturers exited the market. So this impacts the global manufacturing and has implications on quality, hence why we wanted to share this slide with you. In the next slide, what we started looking at is who are others that are thinking about these issues. So I wouldn't have time to discuss this study from Michael Sadela, but very interesting. First time I saw this article, this publication was very, very keen and quickly connected with Michael. And I think it's one of the few articles that has really been able to situate pharmacovigilance within product manufacturing in both the industry and the general reporting, because he was calling for a way for GDP, GMP, good manufacturing practices, good distribution practices, and good pharmacovigilance practices to work in concert. And to do that also, not just for new products that are coming to the market, but for established products. And the argument to include established product there isn't that you may likely just see a rare adverse drug reaction, 1 out of 10,000 that never occurred for a product that's been in the market for 40, 50 years. No, but it might be that there are manufacturing variations. They started sourcing the active ingredient from another source. They started packaging differently. They were using a CDMO that is different. They're using a different recipient. So all this may lead to changes that you see, even with established products. And so some of you may be familiar with nitrosamine impurities that really came up quite recently with a lot of established products that have a tertiary amines on them. So this article was really good in talking about that. Then on the right is a classification that I was playing around with years back. And what it does is, again, to separate.
Do you have a quick thought?
Yep, quick thought. As they're talking about the quality and monitoring the manufacturing of pharmaceuticals to make sure that they are safe, what came to my mind is a client that I had years and years and years ago who worked at GlaxoSmithKline. And he worked in the actual room where the big vats of medication were, whatever it is that they do, brewed, concocted. And what he told me is that conditions in general were frequently not sanitary, and that there were things that would alarm most of us and cause us not to want to take those products if we were aware of what was going on. However, what happens is when the FDA comes around to inspect, the FDA gives notice. I believe he said it was like a 2 to 3 day notice. 2 to 3 day notice is great because now I've got time to scurry around and tell everybody, tighten up your act, pull yourselves together. FDA is coming. FDA comes, they sign off. You're looking just dandy, sanitary and copacetic. Then the FDA leaves and everything reverts to its previous state. So a real no-brainer for me would be do an unannounced drop-by. So when we have somebody in our home or an employee and we suspect that they may be doing illegal drugs that we don't want them doing, we don't say, I'm going to test you next Thursday so that they've got time to go off the substance and make sure that they're going to come clean on the test. We just reserve the right to do it on the spot. Go right now, pee in the cup, need to see what's what. Why are we giving the pharmaceutical companies notice of when the FDA is coming to inspect? It's ridiculous.
Great. Great points. Yes, and you think Robert Kennedy is addressing some of these just it's just so blatantly ridiculous.
So Robert Kennedy's my boy. I am so happy he's in office. I am so pleased as punch. I feel like I'm a proud mama bear. He has a really big job, and I am super impressed with what he's been able to accomplish to date. I quite frankly am sometimes surprised when people are like, but he's wreaking havoc. He's doing this. I'm like, what is he doing? Where is the deficiency of red dye number 40 that causes some devastating disease? How can you object to getting red dye number 40 out of the cafeterias in our kids' schools? So I have no idea. I have no idea if he's addressing that one or not, because the list for him is super long. But, when I get my face-to-face audience, I'll put it on his radar and say, Bobby, stop having the FDA give notice. Let them just go in unannounced and see how they do that.
Absolutely. Okay, let's jump right back into the presentation.
Focused on key starting material, and they showed the concentration of the sourcing of key starting materials from China. So that tells you that even if you went to address manufacturing, finish those formulation manufacturing of a product like benzathine penicillin in the US, you say, I want to bring in one more manufacturer because I want to decentralize and make the supply chain more resilient. If you haven't solved the problem at the key starting material and active ingredient level, you haven't solved the true problem. So that's why it's important to understand where the choke points exist. The second part, the determine and evaluate, is because there are just several things that are needed to solve the problem. It could be to start, to expand the capacity of a brownfield facility that's already manufacturing the product, or to set up a new greenfield facility. It could be to use tariffs. It could be to use procurement incentives. It could be to use the Commissioner National Priority Voucher. So there could be regulatory, policy, trade, economic, and technical solutions. And so that second, determine and evaluate is meant to identify what are those levers that can be used to solve the problem and deploy them. And then lastly, to solve. So in solving, we'll just discuss that with the last slide. Let's go to the next one, which will be my last. So I'll just take you to the mitigate and solve, the third pillar. So essentially there, we're giving you some sense of some of the things, solutions that USB have, and we're cataloging what other organizations have in solving this problem of supply security and quality that will reduce the instances of substandard and falsified medicines. So we have the great work that our colleagues, Victoria and her team does in our healthcare quality and safety division, our USP, from compounding preparations to the DC Plus that can probably play a role in formulary substitution and several other pieces of work that doing. You find about pharmacogenomics that Victoria is leading. And so there's several aspects that we deploy from that. Then we have a department that is focused on advanced manufacturing technology. And what that does is to really take each of these problems, particularly if they require a technology solution. If it is an active ingredient that is made only in China or in India, how do we start making them here in the US? And how do we make them in a way that's environmentally friendly? So if they are using dirty chemistry, how can we use solvents that are more environmentally tolerable? Or how can we use biocatalysis and avoid the use of chemicals, right? So all this is what our advanced manufacturing technology does. And lastly, the pharmaceutical quality and testing program, which really does what we talked about earlier, which is to collect products, sample products, and test them in the market to know the level of failure. The rest of the slides have details that you may want to see about the PPQT program, as we call it, on how the testing is done and the results are shared and others. And I can visit that in the questions and comments, but I'm really mindful of time, so that has to stop there.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jude. And I think when we talk about adverse drug events, that some of the product quality challenges are, I would say most people are not aware of those. So just thank you so much for your work and the work of the United States Pharmacopoeia to kind of advance quality and standards development for the products that we all, like you said, assume are what they say they are. So at this time, I do want to introduce our online panelist that's joining us for this session, Dr. Mike Gagnon. Would you like to introduce yourself, Mike?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Gagnon, Senior Director of Pharmacy Practice and Quality with the American Society of Health System Pharmacists.
Great. Welcome, Mike. And I think recently you and I were discussing an interesting article on adverse event submissions, and then when they go back and look at the NDCs, that they're kind of disproportionately, related to manufacturing plants and emerging economies. Do you want to comment a little bit on that?
Sure. And I think it goes back to a little bit of what Jude was discussing. We assume everything that's in a bottle or a vial is what it says it is. And the reality is that our current system under the FDA is pass-fail. Everything is assumed to be the same. Generics are assumed to all be equivalent. And in general, generics are fine. I don't want to create alarm that generics are all bad. And if you're trying to determine the quality of a generic, I'd caution you against using country of origin as a proxy. It's not the best correlation. However, there was a study that I mentioned that you alluded to, where looking at adverse event data out of FDA's database, the NDC skewed a little bit more toward manufacturing in India. And so it highlights some concerns with the product quality. Again, I think Jude laid this out really nicely on, what we think we're buying. Is it what's there? And that, he mentioned nitrosamine impurities. There was another example back in 2008 that had fatalities associated with it. That was contamination of a heparin product. So product quality is definitely something that can result in adverse events. And we typically think, at least in my mind, prior to some of these events, as a pharmacist, you think it's the active ingredient that's causing whatever the adverse event is. And in reality, it could be an excipient, whether it's there intentionally or whether it's an impurity. So it's a word of caution that, step back, don't make that assumption that it's always the actual active ingredient that's a cause of some outcome.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know these supply chain challenges often hit our hospitals and health systems, so I'd love to hear more about that from your perspective, Jeanette. Jacqueline?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a place in which
you had something you'd wanted to add, Susan?
I did. So I don't believe we've gotten there yet in their presentation, but I'm looking at my little cheat sheet, and I see that the first discussion question is, how can adverse drug events be better tracked in clinical practice? Which is a great question, especially because I already squawked earlier in the day about how so many of them are not reported. One of the thoughts I have comes from comparing whatever the system in place now currently is to the VAERS system. For people who don't know what VAERS is, it is the vaccine vaccine adverse event reporting system. My understanding of that is that reporting an adverse effect of a vaccine is both time and labor intensive on the part of the physician. What I read is that it takes on average about 30 minutes to complete it. So I would sort of factor that in to everything else that's already on a physician's to-do list as well. And this next part is sheer lunacy to me. There's no save feature. So if you are 22 minutes into typing up the report about Polly Sue and her adverse reaction, you then get called away to deal with something. You come back, it's gone. You need to invest all 22 minutes over again. And if you get called away then at minute 14, you need to start over again. For sure, there is some intentionality to that, because in this day and age where tech is where it is, where you, Liam, are able to do a simulcast of an event that's happening, like, surely we know how to create save features, because everything I've ever done online, every long, cumbersome form, you can press save and come back to it later. Why are you making it so difficult for an already overworked, underpaid, exhausted physician who's been up for 26 straight hours to create a report of a suspected vaccine adverse event?
Absolutely. It's just, ridiculous, just common sense.
It's common sense.
Don't make it that hard. Yeah.
It's so common sense that I'm sorry to be so cynical, but I have to go back and say, I think it's intentional. Because how would you make a 30-minute form and not include a save feature? You really think most people have 30 uninterrupted minutes in the middle of a high-flying work environment? You're in the ER where things are exploding left and right? No.
Yeah, and then something happens, you lose the information you just spent 28 minutes putting together. It's just beyond.
And if you're like most people, you're going to say, I'm done. I've been here for X number of straight hours. I'm exhausted, and I'm going to miss like bedtime with my kids if I don't get out of here. I think I'm going to let that one go.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's see if we can get into speaker view here. And there we go. And I think let's join the presentation, see how's it
basic
going.
information, I think, is in place to start. And then there's just a great deal of value in heightened sensitivity and just having an index of suspicion, right? That, well, this product that I'm giving a patient may, I've done everything I can as a provider. I've been able to diagnose the disease. I've been able to, I want to get the maximal outcome out of this patient. So I don't want this last thing, which is the pill I'm giving, to really be the obstacle to me getting the maximal outcome I wanted. So just having that index of suspicion about the quality of the products, asking questions to the pharmacist, posing questions to the pharmacist, is that what it looks like now? Or showing some interest and understanding the way the supplies come, and utilizing really the great resource that the hospital pharmacists and pharmacists offer have. I think that should be the way to improve this. So every provider utilizing the radio accessibility of pharmacists to understand the details about the products.
And I'll say, as a primary care doctor, I prescribe hundreds of different medicines, maybe mostly 20 or 30. And I had very little window into what the manufacturing quality would be of the things I prescribed. It would go to the pharmacy, the pharmacist would then dispense it. Sometimes I'd have patients come to me and say, gee, the color changed, my pills changed. And I didn't have a good way to troubleshoot that for them. Was it the right medicine, or did somebody put the wrong medicine in the bottle, which unfortunately occasionally happens. It's less and less now, but sometimes that happens. But often it was a different generic. They got switched out. And sometimes the patients thought that they had a different response to that new generic. And that's a tricky one to work out with your pharmacy, to say, gee, can you source a different generic for this patient who thinks that the green generic doesn't do it? They run and go back to the orange generic. Okay.
I think to your question, Sarah, about like what information do patients and clinicians get, I don't know how much they really have a say. Like on the health system level, it's a committee who's deciding which drugs they're going to have in their contracts and which manufacturers they're contracting with. And so I don't know if that's something that should be more transparent, if it's feasible to be more transparent, because there's so many different factors that go into those purchasing decisions.
To piggyback off that, I do agree with that, right? And so when we look at our regular governing bodies within health systems, right, typically they're your pharmacy and therapeutic committees, we like to call them P&T, right? And talking through when we're looking at risk versus benefit, and when we're looking at the clinical evidence of the medications that we're deciding to add to our formulary lists, as well to what should be added. But in taking it one step further, right, we might add a certain medication, but we tend to have little control in regards to the actual manufacturer. But we're going to be able to pull and source that from, right, depending on who we are contracting with as a vendor in order to provide those medications to us.
Something that I wanted to add that I think is really a challenge that was touched on is the excipients, and recognizing that an excipient might be a cause of an adverse reaction and not the actual drug ingredient. If somebody came to me as a pharmacist and said which excipient could be causing this, and even if I had the material in front of me, I would not know how to answer that question. So how do you suss that out, that it could be an excipient reaction? I don't know that there's great guidance out there for that, or what are even excipients that are commonly associated with reactions. Is that information out there somewhere?
I think to add to that as well too, especially when we look at some of our resources that we tend to naturally lean into, right? Especially when we're looking at like DDIs, like drug-drug interactions, right? How many resources, what systems, processes, databases are in place that are actually truly looking at drug excipient interactions as well too, and where can you source that information? It sounds like that might be a gap in which we can go ahead and support. We're looking at objective items and next steps.
There's been just a lot of, just to your point, a lot of concerns about the CPNs, and whether, to the extent that there's knowledge about how much they can impact on the quality of the product, and also even real life situations. I mean, we all remember what was the origin of FDA. The origin of FDA was as though for a diet named glycol which ideally should be just an excipient, but contamination of sulfanilamide. And that same diethylene glycol contamination has happened more than another, dozens and dozens of times in the world since that 1937. And the last was last year, where it killed people in Uzbekistan, Indonesia, and one country in West Africa. So excipients is a factor, but to the question about how to know about whether the excipient is the source of the problem. So fortunately, manufacturers in formulating the products, they are required to test those excipients as well as inputs, but as well as in the formulation. And FDA has got a database of approved excipients. And novel excipients are coming in. There are new excipients that do come in. But again, when those are used, to the extent that, the knowledge about them, I don't know, I haven't followed that recently, how their safety and everything is established. But I can imagine there's a regulatory process for that. But I think that familiarity with the excipients is one place to start, which are the established excipients that have been approved with predicate product, with the brand and the first entry generics and all that. And then just identifying when you see a new multi-source equivalent that uses a new excipient and being able to ask questions about it, because just identifying that, even if you don't have the answer, will be a place to start. Then you can now start probing further.
Another thing my patients always wanted was the drug supplement, drug food interactions. And that was, we could sometimes source that, but not nearly as reliably as like drug-drug interactions. But so many people buy their own supplements, take their own supplements. And presumably there's some of the same issues in the supplement world as there are in a regulated medical world.
Do we want to talk about supplements? Okay, great. And I know when there's kind of supply chain challenges and shortages and things like that, sometimes our alternative is to go ahead and compound that medication. I know it's been in the news lately around the GLP compounding. So if you want to speak to any of those challenges and opportunities, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, with the popularity of GLP-1s and the shortages that we experienced that have ended, I'll be very clear. We've really seen a rise in compounding related to the GLP-1s, and it really does bring a concern around adverse drug events and quality. I remember speaking to patients multiple times a day, asking them about side effects and things like that, because I was terrified as a compounder of these things. What could possibly be happening? What we're seeing is now that FDA is becoming more and more clear that compounding of GLP-1s should not be happening, those who are sticking around are resorting to different suppliers, different strategies with different excipients. And what that calls for is patients and providers to really analyze these compounders and what they're doing to make sure that they're protecting themselves. You mentioned the labels as something to analyze, but people who are compounding should be analyzing their certificates of analysis, because they're looking at bulk ingredients. And what is the way that patients can report adverse events for these compounded drugs? I mean, yes, you can report them on MedWatch, and I know that FDA gets them, but I don't think they're reported anywhere near to the level as other drugs. So I think it's an opportunity for adverse drug events to be improved for certain.
You think there's a greater
You had something to add, Susan?
Yes, once you mute them. Thank you. So this is just a small side note. This is not directly relevant to what they were talking about, but on the subject of compounded pharmacies. A few things that I would want to put on people's radars. Number one, prices are widely variable. So call around. And what I have found is that It isn't just that one pharmacy has lower prices. It varies by medication. Pharmacy A's price will be lower on medication R, and Pharmacy B's price will be lower on medication S. So that's point A. Point B that I think everybody ought to know, because I was late to the party on this realization, the doctor gets a little financial kickback from the compounding pharmacy. And this is relevant for people who, like me, go the functional medicine route. Functional doctors get a financial kickback not only from the compounding pharmacy that they use, but also if they advise their patients to order the supplements that they prescribe through a particular platform, i.e. FullScript is the one my functional doctor uses. They are getting a percentage. I should have figured it out, because when I went to my functional doctor and said, why do I have to order through FullScript? The first layer of her answer made sense, which was that when you order through a place like Amazon, you have no idea what you're getting. And true enough, I've certainly had people, for example, a friend of mine uses a particular type of cosmetics. She found it cheaper on Amazon. It came in the container and bottle that looked exactly like what she buys from the actual company, but she said the product was not the same. And certainly people have had that experience ordering the pills from Amazon that should be little yellow pills, but instead they're round purple pills. That I understand. I wish my doctor would have said to me, in fact, I think my doctor should have provided me with that information right out of the gate, like on day one when I walked in as a patient. I think she should have said, for full disclosure. Because when I found out that she hadn't told me, even when I pushed, it irritated me enough that I now go through the labor of ordering from each company individually, which is like, so much more difficult. But it just makes me angry. I just feel like she should have told me. And then the other piece is that with the compounding pharmacies being of the different prices, when I went to my functional doctor and said, Dr. Functional, it's cheaper if I get it from this compounding pharmacy. Am I good to go? She said, you're not. I said, why not? She said, well, I have visited the compounding pharmacy that I use and that I'm imagining is probably true. And they meet my standards. Again, I'm sure that's true. And she said, other compounding pharmacies sometimes use binders and fillers. And I have patients who have a high degree of sensitivities, and some of them will react to the binders and fillers, even though not the medication. What I should have said, but didn't think fast enough, was, okay, but I'm not that person. I don't have sensitivities to binders and fillers. And again, when I was pushing on why through here when it's cheaper over there, I feel like that was the point where she should have said, if she hadn't on day one, for full disclosure, Susan, I get a little something back. So just people who go the functional medicine route, I think functional medicine is a glorious, wonderful, beautiful thing. If you are fully compliant, they will get you well. Pay attention to your pennies because it's expensive, and just pay attention to things like that. Ask your doctor a lot of questions. And if the answers aren't quite making sense to you, or if you feel like there's a little bit of something there, dig deeper, ask directly. For example, with the testing, often functional doctors are big on testing. To a degree, it can be useful, and particularly in the early part of treating a person when you're trying to figure out what's going on. When you're talking about doing basic detoxification protocols that, quite frankly, we all should be doing because of the level of pesticides, chemicals, phthalates, PCBs, on and on and on, that we're all exposed to, heavy metals, I think the answer is just detox as a regular thing. Unless you're going to alter the protocol based on what you're finding, I'm not sure I need to be spending $300 on this particular testing company that my insurance doesn't cover, and then another $400 over here, all just for information that isn't really going to alter the way we're moving forward. So just putting that on people's radar. Go enthusiastically, but beware your pocketbook and ask the questions and pay attention to your gut. Not your literal gut in this case, your figurative one, if you feel like there's anything that you're not being told.
The Trump administration is super big on making drugs affordable, First Nation status or something like that. Are you familiar with this? Do you have any opinions on this? Is like brand new. It's just got online a couple of weeks ago. But
So I've
Trump,
not, yeah, I mean, I've not really delved into it, but like from the little bit that I'm aware, I'm on board. If we're paying 4 times as much for the same medication as another country, and he has some magic that he can make that come back down, yeah, let's do it.
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what that's all
The other
about,
thing-
because
Yeah,
it's
the
on the
other thing-
radar, but I haven't jumped in and
Right. And the other thing that I'll say while we're on the subject of money, nutraceuticals, compounding pharmacies, and trying to get people better, boy, does it anger me that the insurance companies decline to cover the vast majority of preventive things. So let's go all the way back to when I'm 22. And my grandmother, who Liam was kind enough to have a little cute picture of her and me together on the video that he made of me being interviewed, my grandmother had osteoporosis. Well, I figured, okay, I'll take a little calcium. And I called my insurance company and I said, I'm going to take calcium and you're going to pay for it. And they said, no, we're not. And I said, well, why not? That's just ridiculous because I've got the genetics for osteoporosis. And I'm telling you 4 decades or 5 before I develop it, I'm going to take a little calcium and we're going to prevent it. And that is going to save you all the money from my DEXA scans, from my Fosamax, from my fractured bones that you're going to have to pay for my medical treatment of. You're only going to be paying for a few bottles of calcium. How about you do that? And again, they declined. So, if you take that math or computation and you amplify it, we can either treat all of us now for the excess of toxins that we have in our system, the excess mercury, the everything else, or we can just let it go. And then in a decade or 2 or 4, we can pay for the vast amount of care that we're going to need for our Parkinson's, our Alzheimer's, our Lewy body dementia, our cancer, our everything else. So even letting alone the sort of humane, being a conscientious, trying to do the right thing by people and give them a better quality of life, the savings in financial dollars would be phenomenal if the insurance companies would cover some relatively low-hanging fruit of doing some expensive functional medicine stuff now, and then not treating us for all the complicated health conditions that we're going to have that are going to require 2, 3, 4 decades of pricey care. To me, it's such common sense, Liam. Help me understand, because I don't understand why that is not, to me, that's like kindergarten math.
that's why we're all here to bring some common sense to this.
So when the functional doctor did run some of that testing, and it showed that on my industrial toxins, so we're talking the things that apparently I had a little stuff that you get from styrofoam. I must have had coffee out of a styrofoam cup at some point. I had byproducts that are added to gasoline that you put in your car. Okay, I'm breathing in a little of that when I fill up my car at the gas pump. Because of my genetics, I don't detox these things very well. So I had levels in my blood that were 10 times, 20 times higher than what is considered to be a safe limit. When you go to the interpretive portion of the test, it says a higher number or a higher reading on this is associated with, and then we had all the things: Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, depression, cancer, autoimmune, you name it. So I called the insurance company and I same argument 30 years later about the calcium. I said, how about you guys pay to treat me now? And then you don't have to pay for all those complex conditions down the road. I thought I might have had them because they said, send us documentation. So me being me, I sent them 100 pages of documentation. And at the end of the day, they still declined to cover it. And eventually I gave up and I ran out of steam, which is what in the medical advocacy realm, that too is by design. It's a game of endurance. Just for all of you who are fighting to get X and such covered, or to reverse some denial or whatever, just keep fighting. You will get a different answer on a different day from a different person. So and CC the insurance commissioner. Insurance companies do not like to be complained about to the insurance commissioner. So if Aetna is my health insurance company and I am not happy that Aetna is declining to cover my X, Y, or Z test protocol, procedure, whatever it is, I'm going to fight politely for a while, then I'm going to escalate and we're going to go in writing and I'm going to CC my husband who's an attorney just to make it look like there's an attorney involved or some friend who's an attorney. And then if I'm still not getting where I need to go, I'm going to start CCing the insurance commissioner, which you can just look up. Who's the insurance commissioner for my state? Once you CC the insurance commissioner, I have found that all of a sudden the answer sometimes changes and they would be delighted to cover your X, Y, or Z. So everybody should know that. Do not accept the first 5, 6, 12 no's. Just keep at it. Try a different angle, try different language. I have a friend whose child was severely medically ill. He had all types of wheelchairs and contraptions and Hoyer lifts and whatnots. And Medicare was the coverer because in addition to covering people who are 65 and up, they also, if you are considered to be disabled by the government, you can be 12 or 20 or 35. If you have a disability as determined by a doctor and the Social Security folks, then you have Medicare. So she accepted the denial that whatever the highfalutin wheelchair wasn't going to be covered. She had a friend who worked in the insurance industry, and the friend said, we're going back. And the friend fed her very specific language to put into her appeal. And the specific language, according to my friend, was code for, I have somebody from within the industry helping me write this letter, else I wouldn't know these magic terms that you guys toss around that the rest of us don't know. So all of a sudden, the wheelchair was covered. So
wow, interesting.
Right? So just and like lean on your friends, go online for the group of other people who are parenting the kid in the wheelchair. Share all of this information and ask people, did anybody have success getting the whatever device covered? My insurance company's telling me no. Start talking to people, even if they're people you've never met, they live in Nebraska, you live in wherever, and figure it out. But do not let them wriggle out of paying for things that they ought to be paying for.
Fascinating advice. So just keep fighting. Don't give up.
Get your mitts out.
Make
keep
sure
fighting, man. And again, it's endurance. Don't give up.
Use the vernacular of the institution. So use the words that they use, and maybe they'll treat you differently. Outstanding information. All right, so let's get back to the room, shall we? Okay.
Her doctor prescribed Wellbutrin. She did not like how it made her feel, and that was enough for me. I didn't want to add extra stress or pressure on her, so I didn't ask any other questions. It just was enough. She told me she didn't like how it made her feel. So we stopped it within 2 weeks. In October 2023, London was admitted inpatient. Her own medical records documented using her self-diagnosis. This is how I found out later they diagnosed her. Her anxiety was a 7 out of 10. Her depression was a 0 out of 10. She was not formally tested for major depressive disorder, and yet she was labeled with it anyway. And I believe these labels create a stigma, one that no child should ever have to carry. They prescribed her Prozac, 5 milligrams. And again, London said, I don't like how this makes me feel. So we stopped it within 5 days. 8 months later, that history was ignored. July 2024, my daughter asked for help. Every single time London asked for help, she reached out. She spoke up. She came to me. So I know the medication affected her thoughts. It altered her actions. It changed her. We brought her back into inpatient. The psychiatrist told me, this is the safest drug out there. I would give it to my children. It's only 10 milligrams, and I trusted him. I consented to 10 milligrams. What I didn't know is that within 3 days, her dosage was increased to 20 milligrams while she was still an inpatient. Without my consent, without my knowledge, no warning, no explanation, no black box warning discussion, no medication guide, no pharmacist consultation, because a prescription was filled in-house in the inpatient facility. Later, I found documents with my name signed marked as verbal consent. I never saw them. I never signed them. Later, I also found documents. Every 15 minutes, they performed a Q15 check. And they documented her as calm, sleeping every single time. No distress, no sadness, no crisis. So I ask you why we need to medicate a calm child. July 30th, she gained access to medication. These medications were in a locked room. We believe she had searched how to gain access, how to pick a lock or get into it. Later, I learned in documents she had told a psychiatrist inpatient facility, in the inpatient facility, that a friend told her, if you take a bunch of ibuprofen, it will kill you. And when she gained access, there was a large bottle of ibuprofen right in front of the basket. She never grabbed them. Instead, she took something else. So I know in my heart, London was not seeking to end her life. Her thoughts were clear. Her thoughts were not clear. Her actions were not logical. They were altered. That same night, she stayed at the night at her dad's. At 1:20 in the morning, she reached out to her counselor asking for help. She was messaging her counselor and friends all night, telling them what she was going to do. No one told us, no one reached out, not even her counselor. July 31st, that day she laughed, she played with her grandparents all day. She seemed like she was still my London. At 8:15, I walked into her room. She hugged me so tight. Mom, I missed you so much. I love you so much. Minutes later, I found her on the floor. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I just wanted to hurt my tummy. We rushed to the hospital. She was 12. She doesn't understand the consequences. She walked in. She was talking. She was alive. I begged for help. The hospital wouldn't pump her stomach, wouldn't give her activated charcoal. They told me it was old school. There was no urgency. She coded at 2:39 in the morning. My daughter died. And I need you to hear this clearly. Every single time, excuse me, every single time London asked for help, she reached out. She spoke up. She came to me. So I know the medication affected her thoughts. It altered her actions. It changed her. Because the last time she didn't come to me, my daughter did not want to die. She thought they would save her because I always had before. And that is what breaks me over and over again every single day of my life. A dear friend later told me that she probably waited until she was at my house because she knew I would keep her safe. Every other time she came to me, and this time she didn't. She trusted them. I trusted them. And that trust cost her everything. After she passed, I uncovered the truth. No consent, no warnings, no explanation, no accountability. Adverse drug events are massively unreported, as you know. Less than 0.3% are reported, up to 99% go unreported. And the pharmaceutical companies bank on that lack of reporting. And if a food product is contaminated, it is recalled. If a car is defective, it's recalled. If a toy harms a child, it's recalled. If a product causes death, it is fixed. So why are pharmaceutical companies not held to these same safety standards? My daughter should be 14. She has no high school starting, no first kiss, no prom, no graduation, no wedding. I'm never going to have any grandbabies. Instead, she is forever 12. I don't want anyone to stop saying her name, London Isabella Ryan Gadd, because if her voice through me saves one person, her life matters. And please do something with this, because no parent should live with a silent bedroom in a story that could have been prevented. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
I wanted to show a picture of London.
Yes. Beautiful girl. And, you know, I have to say, as a parent, your story it's the type of thing that keeps me up at night. And I'm just really thankful for you to be here and to open up this session. We've talked all day about what the challenges are, but this is an urgent priority. We're losing our kids every day. We lose lives to these challenges. And some of these, I think, are low-hanging fruit, logistical opportunities. So that's why, we slated this last hour to talk about what could a more coordinated plan look like. Because I think you all mentioned some of the potential solutions to patients and parents and caregivers. And, we have data, but it's not necessarily being acted on quickly or as quickly as it could. So there's solutions here, and that's what we're here to discuss for this hour. And I know we have a couple more folks to give some updates. I think someone's going to be coming in online. And we also have a new participant to the roundtable. Just join us as well if you want to give an introduction, Tammy.
Sure. My name is Tammy Heisinger.
You wanted to say something, Susan? You have something?
Yes, please.
Thoughts on your mind?
Well, first of all,
we
I am
actually have a comment. Leanne Soleri, she says, sorry for your loss. Beautiful girl. It's a powerful story. Yes.
incredibly. And again, my heart goes out to that mom and that family and that child who doesn't get to live her life here on Earth. But the really awful part is how common that is. That mom's story is not, it's not an outlier. It happens all the time. I know people that have had variations of that happen, whether they've been clients, friends of friends, the neighbors, third cousin, whoever. I've heard that story or variations of it over and over. What I wanted to say is, as we head into this final session, the 3 to 4 part is supposed to be about what can we do. Some of the things that we've talked about make sense, and I'm sure will come up. I had a light bulb go off when the woman was talking about it, the mom that we just heard from. You need to get the word out to the kids. And the way you do that is TikTok. They are all on there. The reason that I think that it would be effective is that there are many therapists, influencers, whoever on TikTok talking about mental health stuff, which means that there are kids who are as young as 10 who are running around diagnosing each other with, you got ADHD, like you meet all the symptoms. I saw it on TikTok last night, or, you got OCD, you got this, you got that. If you put it out there on TikTok, like, hey kids, before you take a medicine for your brain health, talk to your mom and your dad and your doctor and just take a look at it and some sort of a cautionary message, not so cautionary that you're going to take an already anxious child and raise their alarm of, oh my God, if I take this medicine, am I going to die? Because they are already super anxious. But just a little bit of a nudge, because the kids are paying attention on TikTok is all I can say. So I just wanted to share that thought. And then I also wanted to quickly, and Liam, go ahead. You had something to say?
No, just go. Go where the kids are. They're on TikTok.
Yeah, where the kids
Brilliant,
are, and that's where the kids are. Because I was thinking that Bob Schwartz's documentary is so powerful. It's 30 minutes long. Sorry, but their attention spans have been shot. They are not watching a 30-minute documentary. You give them something short and concise in a TikTok, they will watch it. So do that. The other thing I wanted to say, and I will try to make it short, but back to the conversation about medical advocacy, where the woman said, I trusted them, meaning the doctors. I'm reminded of one of my worst cases of trauma, which is the case of a mother of a young woman who was 33 years old. And this 33-year-old young woman was nonverbal, and she was cognitively delayed, had the cognition of about a 7-year-old. This is an important point. The young woman never had the diagnosis of autism. She had a full workup at birth, and the only diagnosis was microcephaly, which is a small brain due to whatever. So in they go to the hospital. The daughter was inpatient in the hospital for 3 months. During that 3 months, the mother was begging for certain treatments. The mother was saying, so again, we have a nonverbal daughter, but this mom has been taking care of her. So they're in sync. And like many nonverbal people, the daughter has some sign language that she can use. You and I might not recognize it as American Sign Language, but the mom knows what it means. So the mom says to the doctors, she's pointing to her leg and she is making the sign for pain. The ultimate cause of death of that young woman, which the hospital admitted was their negligence, was due to an embolism in her leg that they did not catch in the 90 days that she was inpatient. In addition to that, the young woman was making the sign for pain. You have the mother begging for pain medication. And over, the doctors would say to the mother, well, we can't give her the pain meds because in people in autism, you get worried about Rett syndrome. And the mother said over and over again, I have told you my daughter is not autistic. That was definitively ruled out with a spinal tap at birth. It didn't matter how many times she said it. It did not make it into the chart. It did not make it into their brains. And so each new resident, doctor, intern, nurse practitioner, whoever that came, physician's assistant that came in would say, well, we know your daughter's autistic and blah, 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 blah. I will tell you that her trauma was so bad that when it came time to negotiate the settlement for the hospital, she begged for a lower amount of money in exchange for face-to-face time with doctors, nurses, orderlies, anyone who would be interacting directly with the patient so that she could educate them on the need to listen to the family, that the family is the one that knows this particular person, particularly if you have somebody who's nonverbal and has cognitive impairment going on. So there's that. One thing I always like to spout off about when it comes time to sort of kick and butt at the hospital when things aren't going the way it should be, medical advocacy. If you or your loved one is able to step up to the plate and be an advocate, which basically means being pushy and persistent, then you get another person to do that. If you are lucky enough that you're on Medicare or your loved one is on Medicare, Medicare will pay for it. That is a new development as of 2024. It's not going to cost you a dime. And the person who sends out will be most likely a social worker who will have medical training. That person will know all the lingo and the medicalese and the procedures and can get into the hospital and start saying, what are we doing here? This young woman's been making the sign for pain. Give her the bleeping pain meds. So there's that. There was another thing or two that I wanted to say. I'll just add that mother, part of the trauma, part of what I've had to hear, not had to, that it makes it, that part of what I have listened to her say over and over again is, I wasn't a good mother because I wasn't able to get the doctors to feed her, for one thing. She was making the sign for hunger and they wouldn't feed her, or medicate her for pain, or pay attention to the fact that the leg was what she kept pointing to. So now that she has a dead daughter, she's not only grieving the loss of the daughter, she's going through a distorted thought process of, I wasn't good enough. I didn't do right by my daughter. And that's the kind of suffering that's caused when the medical system is too overloaded and each of those doctors didn't take the time to read the chart. Another thing that I always tell people, anybody's in the hospital, my rule, we're doing a one-page summary, okay? We got the name, we've got all the current diagnoses, all the medications, and all whatever's relevant, but it's got to be one page because they will not read it. And if you don't do that, then you have happened what else I have seen, which is the person comes in and is handling the broken leg of a person with cognitive impairment. And when they're stopped by that person's family member advocate person, and that person, and the family member advocate says to the nurse, hold on. You're being kind of rough on that leg. Do you know that leg is broken? No, wasn't aware of that. They don't read the chart. I can remember going
in relation to your story, we've got a comment. Leanne says, you would think it would be common sense that the mother would know. You know, it's
you would
ridiculous
think, right?
That
Leanne, I agree with you.
Who would know a child better than the mother, you know?
Exactly. It's
If
like
the
when an
mother says
infant cries, the parents know, oh, that cry means hungry. That one means tired. That one, you know, the parents know, listen to the parents. And that's why, like, have a lot of emotion around it because I've seen so many bad stories. But just, I don't think anybody has bad intentions, but they are overworked. They do not have the time. So you're in there and you're in their face trying to get them to pay attention, and you're making them read the chart. I went in one time and asked, how are we doing with the headache from last night? And the nurse gave me the answer that I will punch somebody one day when they give me this answer. I wouldn't know anything about that. I just came onto my shift. So I pull out my best fake smile and I said, oh, I'm a little confused. Doesn't the nurse from the previous shift leave you notes about how the patient's doing? And I got this real condescending, dismissive, well, something as minor as a headache wouldn't make it into the notes. Dug deep into my reservoir of patients and I said, did anybody tell you that this person has cognitive impairment? No, nobody mentioned that. I said, we've got cognitive impairment going on. This person is not going to tell you she has pain. You are going to need to go in there and ask, do you have pain? What's the number? Would you like medication?
Absolutely. Wow, powerful. That was a powerful story from the presenter. Let's take a look back at the room, at the conference, and shall we see what's going on? Shall we see what they're?
Every eyeball is going to be on me for the rest of my life. You know, I'm looking out the window. Are they around the corner?
It was the medication at first place.
I mean, why with $1 billion system? Who's going to help?
Yeah, well, I think what Brett was saying with a system that tracks it. We have a system to report it. Right. We have several systems to report it. Mm-hmm. Some work better than others. What we don't have is this automatic tracking system, as far as we know, where FDA or the assistant secretary or somebody gets a report saying, you know, in the last 12 months, we've had X number of adverse event reports of people dying who were taking such and such a drug, or, you know, some serious thing. That's what we're missing. We're getting these individual reports that, as Bob said, don't necessarily. Yeah.
And the point of measure, I mean, the point of why you create metrics and why you have performance metrics is for accountability. And so if there's not accountability, right, if there's no action, nothing's going to happen. If it's just a check the box exercise, or if it's just even reporting, or even if it's tracking, but if nothing happens as a result of it. So and the way you get things to do in this system, it's a coin operated system, right? This is still a for-profit system. And so the way you hold people accountable is through payment and reimbursement. And that can, you know, we can argue about who should be held responsible and what chain of command, to your point, everybody all the way through. But without some kind of accountability, particularly financial accountability, there is not going to be action. So if we think about measures, we have to think about who we can hold accountable and in what way. Is that reimbursement from CMS, from Medicare, from the states, if it's Medicaid, at the commercial level? I'm not sure what's the way, but there has to be some kind of measures that can.
And also from a safety standpoint, within health systems implement safety programs, they encourage more reporting. Right. So the last thing you want to do is create a measure that says, oh, if you have more than 3 adverse events in your clinic, right, you get punished. Yeah. Because what you want is to open the floodgates of reporting. And so you have to think about that in a sort of measurement and accountability context.
Yeah.
I want to encourage.
You want to encourage.
I wanted to say that because there's just a global database for adverse event reporting, and the country that outperforms all others is the United States. Meanwhile, it isn't that the incidence of adverse events are more here. It's because as low as the reporting here is, we used to call it a tip of the iceberg, up to the point about 0.3% and all that is really as low as that in terms of reporting compared to the events that does happen. But as low as that is a higher rate of reporting compared to other countries. And so functional epidemiological systems thrive by when they report, it shows effectiveness. Right, is over time you expect those reports to go down if interventions are working. And so I think one of the things is really to the extent that the reporting can be, you take the human beings out of it. ways to automate it, and ways to the point of to the question that Bob you raised and others. What do you do about it? So maybe involving FDA, there's an Office of Surveillance and Epidemiology, and this part of what they do is supposed to really analyze this data and several other things and make sense of it, and then it impacts on the post-marketing issues with the drug and the industry. But again, that might not be sufficient. But the point is, some of these events are not reported. Those that are reported are shy of events that are not catastrophic. So you have a product that's not working, who cares? And they move on to another product. You have a product that have poor quality, it's not working, and then you have switches, right? Rather than those data are captured, and to your point about outcome-based payments, so you eyeball those data to inform how you continue to incentivize that product based on its performance and getting you the clinical outcomes.
But what about the individual? Where some people are suffering out there.
Well, here's a question: is that so? We've got the capability, and FDA just updated their FAIR system, so it's basically a catch-all in one place for all adverse events. Who here is familiar with the National Violent Death Reporting System through HHS? Anybody heard that term before? Okay, so the states, they partner with the feds, partner with the states, and the states. Many of the
Okay, Susan, we have a comment that I think is something right right in your expertise. Right here, okay. Leanne says, I have a son who has suffered a severe brain injury, who uses his phone to communicate, to text. I'm very experienced in dealing with this in hospitals, in therapy, etc. Believe me, I have had some very direct conversations. Some staff are just lazy, don't care, just being honest.
Yeah, so it's Leanne again, and unfortunately, Leanne, you already know you're right. I don't have to tell you you're right. I was trying to be diplomatic because I do think there are some who are just overworked. I think it's also that thing where, for you, this is the only, that particular child, the only John or George or Patrick or whoever he is. For the medical team caring for him, it is one more brain injured patient, dime a dozen, see it all day long. So there's that. Yeah, and another thing I tell everybody is, with all due respect, and this sounds worse than it is, but I don't know how else to say it. Don't believe what your doctor tells you. I can't tell you how many times. So let's take something as basic as hearing. Went to the audiologist. This is me we're talking about, who told me that I had sensory neural hearing loss. And he said, "You're ready. You're a candidate for hearing aids when you're ready." And I said, "Terrific. Anything we can do to either stabilize the situation so that I don't continue to lose hearing, or anything I could do to reverse it." No, you're ready, like whenever, And by the way, he did deliver this news, which again, routine run of the mill for him. For me, it was pretty upsetting. I was, 55 or under, kind of young for hearing loss. He delivered it to me in the hallway, standing up. So we're not even in a private room with the door shut, sitting down. When I went home, I spent a good 2.5 to 3 minutes on my computer, and I just Googled it. And there were clinical trials in Massachusetts coming out of Mass General Hospital, where researchers were looking at injecting stem cells into the inner ear to stimulate the inner ear to regrow the little hairs. I forget the name. I want to say cilia, but I'm not sure. That would enable a person with sensory neural hearing loss to regain their hearing. So I thought this was very interesting, and I was mad at the doctor for not telling me, but I put a lid on it and I wrote what I thought was a very nice note. Kind of just, oh, by the way, I came across these clinical trials, thought it was super interesting, and I did email the lead researchers, but I was wondering, maybe you could help me get into a clinical trial. And the response I got will not surprise anybody who is already angry at the medical system. His front desk person called me back and said he's referring you to a different doctor. So I was booted from the practice because here's my
Leanna's
thing.
Leanna's enjoying your
I know,
story.
right? LOL. So I figure it's one of two situations with that doctor. Either he was not aware, which in that case, I'm going to say, dude, your specialty is audiology. Do you not pick up the Journal of Audiology or whatever it is and read it for 5 minutes while you're also watching TV? If I can find it in 3 minutes and I'm just a layperson, you don't have 3 minutes every once in a while, and you don't go to conferences, you don't talk with other people in the hearing world, other people, that boggles my mind. Or you did know it and you chose not to tell me. And that makes me angry, because that should be my choice. If I want to go into a clinical trial and sure, it's an unproven treatment, maybe I'm going to go completely deaf and I'll be worse, but it should be my choice. And I can't make that choice if I'm not made aware by him or the internet that such an option is available to me. So that infuriated me. And I've seen far worse than that. I was connected to somebody who's no longer with us, but that person had a spinal cord injury and was in a wheelchair at the time. And 5 years into her treatment, I found out that there was a limb restoration center that was about 30 minutes from where she lived. And at that time, I called the rehab center where she was inpatient, the rehab center that specialized in spinal cord injury care. And I talked with the social worker because I was on the team of people that had, like she'd given permission for me to do so. And I said, do you know about this? And the social worker's talking to me. And again, this is a social worker in an inpatient rehab that specializes in spinal cord injury care. And she's like, no, I've never heard of it, but I'm looking it up on the computer while you're talking. Wow, this is cool. They do nerve and tendon and ligament repositioning, resectioning to try to help people get movement back in arms and legs. So then I'm computing, like, when I had asked that doctor, that's so cool that you have this clinic. Is there anybody closer to where the person I know lives? And the doctor looked at me like I was insane. He said, Susan, I got somebody flying in from Dubai. This is specialized treatment. And then my brain exploded because I'm thinking, how does word make it all the way to Dubai for somebody to get on an airplane and come and see this fellow so he can work on them and try to restore function? And the person that I was connected to was 30 minutes away in a care center that specialized in spinal cord injury. And her team there, she had 5 years, including Johns Hopkins, 5 years of high level treatment, had physical therapists, had physiatrists, had oncologists, neurologists, you name it. Nobody ever mentioned to her. And at that point, it was too late. She was dead a year and a half later. And then the second person that I met that had a spinal cord injury, once I knew this, I said, hey, guess what? Do you know about this? That person was a year and a half into being a spinal cord injury patient and lived even closer to the limb restoration clinic than the first person did. Nope, nobody mentioned it. So all of which is to say, no matter what your diagnosis, your doctor may mean well, do your own homework. You may find out that there's a few more things out there that your doctor's not yet aware of.
Do your own due diligence, absolutely.
Do your own due diligence always.
Shall we see what's
we shall
happening?
Yes, let's do it.
For this very interesting discussion, and you raised the underreporting. That is a global issue, and how to overcome this issue. Really, we're talking now within the International Society of Pharmacovigilance.
I'm sorry, Susan. We've got an update, a comment that I think is important to share. So let's unmute you and share the comment. All right. They told me he was brain dead to take him off life support. Then they said he would never get off a feeding tube. Then they said he would never graduate from high school. Wow, what a powerful story. Mm-hmm. He would never get a job. He's a successful photographer, and he did music production also. I could go on and on. I sat around and listened to all the specialists sit around and tell me when he was leaving rehab after a year, I said, okay, appreciate all you say. Then comes God. He has defied it all. He has defied it all. He works out.
Yeah.
Yes, he even.
Leanne, absolutely. First of all, I'm so thrilled that your son blew all the expectations of the doctor out of the water. Any of us who have walked a person to the finish line where they die have had the experience of, they say he's going to last 2 weeks, and here he is. It's 6 years later, still with us. Or the other direction, you got a good 4 years, don't worry about it. And 2 months later, they're gone. I highly recommend a documentary called Heal, Heal, on Netflix. It is about a succession of people. Leanne says, absolutely, Susan, he has done everything they said he wouldn't, right? And I think of a little girl that my children grew up with. And this little girl's mother told me that she had a stroke at birth. And she was told to take the baby home and love her, that the baby would not last long and would never progress beyond being a vegetable. This child was in the gifted program at school. She is 25 years old. You met her. She's a bright, vibrant human. She has no physical, that's not true. She doesn't have any physical limitations in terms of her physical movement. She has some underlying health conditions, but believe me, she's working a full-time job and kicking butt. She's doing great. Amen. Right. Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Looks
Yeah.
like
You'll
she's
love
going to
that.
check out the.
Leanne says, okay, I will
What's the
check it
movie
out.
called again?
And like anybody else out there, it's a very
What's the
inspiring
movie name?
documentary. It's called
What's the movie's
Heal,
name?
Heal. I believe it was on Netflix when I watched it. And it is a whole lot of people. There was one fellow who had a spinal cord injury, was told he would never walk. He was offered a back surgery to help reduce some form of symptom. He said, I'm good. I'm going to go home and meditate. And he went home and meditated for 6 hours a day, visualizing that he could walk and run. And within 3 months, he's riding his bike and walking.
Is this the movie?
Like there's stories like this all the time. Yeah. That looks right. Yep.
Look right.
Yeah, so this one is honestly, it's about the sort of psycho-spiritual aspect of it. A little bit about, I guess you would say, manifestation and the power of our minds over our bodies, which is always a slippery slope. I am not implying that anybody who is ill or has a level of physical disability just isn't visualizing enough. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is there's ample cases of people who have exceeded expectations, and visualizing and all of that may or may not be part of what helped get them there.
Awesome. Okay, Leanne, thank you so much for your engagement and your comments. And I think we're going to go back to the presentation. Shall we, Susan, and see where we're at?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
In fact, so I'm at Optum now, and I was talking to our lead for this work, and in all of our pharmacies, we have some pharmacies that dispense medications. They all have electronic automated ADE reporting right out of their pharmacy EHR. So it's routinely done by 4 or 5 of our EHRs that support pharmacists who are doing things like infusion therapy, for example. In places of high volume and likely to do this, I think they would, it's also about, will the clinician actually click the button? Even if it's super easy to do, they still have to think about it. And so you're going to be more likely that would be the case in a place where they're experiencing more of these. So it might be like an infusion center. It might be a place that knows they're dealing with drugs with a tight therapeutic window, that they're more likely to have an ADE. The general provider, primary care provider out in practice probably doesn't take the time to do this kind of reporting because they're super busy. They're seeing 20 and 30 patients a day. And even if they hear of one of these, it might be just once a month. And so they've got to remember how to click the button and remember how to do the thing.
And so they click the button, and then where does it go?
So for us, ours will go to, we have our own patient safety organization, so they all go to our own PSO. And then we report the reportable ones to the FDA. And then sometimes pharma wants them as well. So some of them also get sent to the pharmaceutical manufacturers as, for their own information about what kind of adverse events are happening. from these medications.
Okay. And then when they come back to the FDA, I know something happens with that. I know you were in the Office of Surveillance and Epidemiology. So how do you all triage those reports once they come in?
So I was in a small office, medication error prevention analysis group was broken up into different therapeutic categories, and you would be assigned on a weekly basis anywhere between like a handful to hundreds of cases that you would manually review. Part of my role when I was there was looking at the Sentinel system and seeing if we could use that to identify potential signals so that, you're going to review each and every single case, but pay close attention to this one because this one is statistically occurring more than it should, more than it normally would. But they are technically reviewed, every single one, by someone at the FDA, and the ones that are deemed to be significant are moved on for review. I mean, everything is categorized and left in the system and published online, I think quarterly. 2 million reports go up. And of course, they're all accessible in future should they start getting more and more of the same reports. But the ones that were deemed more significant were brought to the attention of leadership, and then we triaged things for changes to labeling, reaching out to the manufacturer, and so on and so forth.
So as someone who worked in that office, do you think that whole process would be better done or more efficient if it was like contracted out through a public-private partnership? Or
that's a great question.
Maybe. I think the people working there were experts in their disease states, and they were able to triage things very accurately, but not to say that somebody in
I guess private had more
Yeah.
money to do it, or
could put more
Yeah.
effort into it. Yeah, potentially.
then
I would say it was very difficult for certain groups that had more reports than others because they were having to, a lot more manpower would be definitely more beneficial.
And somebody to go out and maybe interview what went wrong.
Yeah, and so that was part of the follow-up is, do we need to contact the reporter and get more information? And those follow-ups were done based on, the triage level.
And some of these will go through this patient safety organization. So that's a separate thing. Every health system is connected to a patient safety organization, which is designed to look for safety events, have them reported, and then they have kind of consultants that can help you as a health system to decrease those safety events. So small practices won't have that, but every hospital will have a PSO, and every large integrated delivery system will have a PSO, and they do some reporting as well out of their patient safety organizations.
And another way, okay.
No, you first.
Take a different tack, which is thank you. The other way to do this also is through the patients directly, as you mentioned, maybe a way to get patients. So there are, what are called patient-reported outcomes and electronic patient-reported outcomes, which are measures to capture what's going on with patients, and they're using increasingly their apps, right? So everybody, not everybody, but most of the population is on a phone, has smartphones, is able to use the apps, and they have these apps that capture, if you give a medication, particularly useful in oncology and things where you have, something that is toxic, right? You're using these drugs that have side effects that are known, some of which can be really risky. And so you get the dosing of the drug, and then there's an app that sort of reminds you on a frequency. Maybe it's every 4 hours, maybe it's every day, every 3 days, depending on the severity, and it asks you questions. Did you have a fever? Did you have this? Did you have a rash? Did you have whatever the reactions are that are known? And then also in an open box for other things. And it links back to the provider's office. And then so that a nurse or somebody can see it, it'll go into the EHR, so it'll flag it when they open it up, saying, this one is serious, right? And it'll give you triage, if this, then that. If fever of this, take Tylenol. If fever of this, go to ER, right? Or contact your provider. So there are ways to capture the data in real time that can be used in real time. And maybe, as you were saying, with the APIs and with FHIR, that can feed into the PSOs and things so that you're capturing events that shouldn't happen in real time, that then somebody, at least on an aggregate level, daily, weekly, monthly, can catch those and you can start to really see in real time what's going on. You sort of catch the hot spots quickly, and maybe there's a way to react, and you can link that to, these all they're all on the same drug. Usually you would give them the app because you're on a specific drug. If you know an ADHD medication or a psychotropic medication to cause adverse effects, or you're concerned of it, give them the app, give them and let them react to it. So that's another way to think about trying to catch sentinel events or things, in real time using the data capabilities now and using some of the existing infrastructure with PSOs and other things that report it. It doesn't capture everybody, but at least it's another way to try to do this in a much faster real time way.
I was thinking because the voluntary reporting is a little difficult. And I was trying to do one for my dad once, and I what was the date? I don't know the date he was prescribed, or, certain information I didn't have that it asked me that I thought I had to have, and I ended up not filling it out at all, which is, and for me, which I really wanted to, because I can only imagine for other people. So is there a way to connect it now that everything's, electronic medical records? Is there a way to easily do that even without AI per se, just to, so if a health professional wants to report something, can they use the electronic health records to do that? I mean, or not to do everything, but just to say what the date was, how old the person was, where they were, that kind of thing.
So again, our pharmacy electronic health records already do that. It is not a requirement of the EHRs under the Office of National Coordinator for Health IT. That's what certifies and regulates what EHRs can do. They have had required case reporting to public health agencies. I think that's just been removed from the requirements of health IT. So it's a very similar thing. The kind of case reporting for your local public health department is a very similar thing to an adverse event report. So that the infrastructure is there. Most EHRs could do most of it, but they're not necessarily going to have that. You're not going to be able to pull every detail that is probably.
A quick thought to share, Susan?
Yes, quick thought to share. The phrase electronic medical records is what brought up this quick thought. So once something gets into your chart, it can be hard to get it out. What I am thinking of is somebody that I knew years and years ago, who, because he had such a complex medical situation and he knew to do his due diligence, at the end of every single doctor's visit, he would request the written summary and he would fact check it. And I remember one time he just about went ballistic because it had marked that he had an STD, a sexually transmitted disease, which he didn't. So he went to his doctor and he said, "What the hell are you doing? Why would you put that in there?" And it turned out that it was a checklist, yes or no. So if the doctor's going too quickly, and again, overworked, lot to do, lot on their plate, I'm just going to accidentally check the button. Then every doctor after that is going to see that information. Now, in that case, that may not be medically vital information. I think for him, it was more the indignity or shame of it. But where it does become medically vital information is things like they put down you have type 2 diabetes and you're actually type 1, which also happened to that same person. That person's doctor, a physician, prescribed for him a medication that is appropriate for a type 2 diabetic. The medication was contraindicated for a type 1 diabetic. The man realized it, went to the doctor and pointed it out and said that his daughter is the one who had brought it to his attention. And the doctor said, "That's really impressive. Is your daughter a nurse?" And the man said, "No, my daughter's 13. So again, the average 13-year-old who's got enough going on upstairs and cares to check into daddy's med list can go and say, "Daddy, they got you on the wrong meds here." That young woman, I'm pretty sure, is a physician right now. She was headed for a career in that. So anyway, and the other thing is that places close. So I had the experience recently, I wanted to call a pulmonologist for someone to see, and I called the one I had seen a few years back. "Oh, no, they're not in business anymore." Okay, well, what if I needed my records from there? No, right? They're not in business. Where are we finding it? Doctors are also only obligated to keep records for 7 years. Leanne says, "I'm in Canada with COVID shot injuries. People were ignored by their doctors when trying to report it on Don't know about in the, oh yeah, that's a long conversation, Leanne. That's like a good 5-6 hours about what happened here in the United States during COVID. But the point is, there could be information in your chart that just simply isn't true and wasn't ever true. And it may or may not be important information when some other specialist of doctor sees it in 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, because again, once it's in there, it's not coming out. It's just going on to the next doctor, because it's in there. So get everything you can every time. And if there are actual scans, don't only get the typewritten printout, of the interpretation of the radiologist or whoever looked at it. Get the actual scan, because there may come a time where another doctor looks at it and says, I would love to compare mom's, pelvic, losing my words, but her scan from now to where her bone density or her whatever was 5 years ago. If you're then in the position of, that place closed 5 years ago, or you can say, lucky you, I got it at the time and it is squirreled away upstairs in my junk heap bedroom. I will go dig it out. Get everything and hang on to it. Doesn't matter how much you think it may never be relevant. If the only thing it is adding to is the clutter in your house, I would argue that it is worth it.
Absolutely. We're entertaining the audience. Leanne, thank you so much for your input and your engagement. That's awesome. And shall we?
If somebody says to you, Susan, was mom ever on blah? I'm like, I don't know. It's been 8 years and I don't remember yesterday because my head is so overcrowded. I don't know what med she was on and what dose 8 years ago. You want to have it somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's take a look at how the conference is doing. What do you say, Susan?
Yeah. Yep.
We have to do a rollout or access your portal. I think, can my parents do this? And I'd say in most cases the answer is no. And I think most people would say that of a lot of their older family members. And so I don't like constantly using AI. We can use AI, but using Claude and Open Chat GPT a lot more lately. I feel like we could integrate with like an AI company that is HIPAA compliant. We can figure that out, where it can be automated, and so it can be a discussion between the patient and the AI, describing what happened, what the experience was. Maybe it wasn't on a certain day, like you said, because that's the thing that turned me off years ago. It was like trying to figure out what my year-long withdrawal, what the start date was. Makes it so odd. And so like I feel like and then have it like pumped out in a form, or like a form that can be reviewed, and then you can chat back and forth with it to make sure it's finalized, accurate, and then submit. Maybe one per each major hospital could have this, so that way it's on site, so that folks that do have technological issues could just walk in the door and use this thing, and then also have a login, so those who want to do it remotely, do it on their own could.
I appreciate you highlighting the technological issues aspect too.
Huge issue.
You have to remember that not everybody has access to the same resources, right? And that goes back to the infrastructure, the support that we provide in order for our patients to be successful.
Just highlight that I put in the chat a link to one of the largest health information networks in the country. That's what exchanges data between health systems. They have a program for electronic case reporting, and this is to public health. So they broker connections between electronic health records of multiple organizations and multiple public health agencies, so they can do this kind of electronic case reporting for public health. And then I think Liz Carlson from Optum can talk.
Let's hear from Liz, then we'll go to John Spagnola, and Tammy, if you want to close us up with some updates from HHS.
Okay, great.
Liz, are you there? Is she unmuted?
Yes, good afternoon.
So, hey.
Thank you. I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing everybody in the room, but I think the question was just learning a little bit more about the technology we've built to make it easier for our clinicians. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So we started building our own platform. We started in 2018. So we have a little experience with this now. And our main goal was whatever the system the pharmacist is working in, that's the system they should be in. I don't want them to have to remember to go out to this system or that system or to do these different pieces. Their job should be taking care of the patient, listening to the patient. So we worked across our different entities within Optum. We have 7 pharmacies that we support right now, as Optum-owned pharmacies, where we have created the technology. If the clinician...
Whoops, you went on mute.
Thing.
You're back. You're
Sorry
back,
about that. Better?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we did is create a button where, you know, something's wrong. I'm in my host system, and there's different host systems. I'm not touching anything, guys. I'm not sure what's going on there. But what happens is they click the button, and then that system talks to the system they're in to take all of the demographic information, so your patient identifiers, their initials, their date of birth, their age, and populate it into a form. And then they're served up a few questions. And what we've done is worked across each one of our business segments. We've reviewed more data than I care to talk about to figure out what are the questions that we need to prompt a clinician so they can quickly get this event in and then finish taking care of their patient, so that event can then go to the next spot, whether it's to the PSO, whether it's a sentinel event, whether it's an adverse event that we need to get to the manufacturer within 24 hours or to the FDA, or a medication error that needs to be investigated. So we've worked on this. That has been our jobs for the last, ideation, almost 10 years now. And we're at the point where we're trying to figure out, how do we productize this? Is there some type of appetite out there to take this code and apply it to different systems and different companies? Kevin, I think you summed it up well.
I have to say that sounds more efficient than the fax we recently received to our cardiologist asking for more information. He seemed really stressed out about it, and I was like, just get that to me. I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Facts.
So let's go to John Spagnola. John, 2 minutes to share your insights.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Hi, everyone. I'm John Spagnola. I'm the president and CEO of Veteran Strategic Solutions. 2 minutes is a tough one, but basically I just wanted to let everyone know that we're making some great progress on written informed consent in Washington, D.C. I worked last year to close Congressman Bill Arakis to sponsor the Written Informed Consent Act, and later last year I closed Senator Tim Sheehy to sponsor it in the Senate, which has never happened before. So we have it on the books. We have 25 national veteran groups that are supporting it, including the biggest, the Legion, VFW, DAV, but that's a lot of groups. Of course, we're getting pushed back by Big Pharma, getting pushed back by the APA and the VA. So what I was going to request is, if anyone's interested in this being implemented, I'm hoping you might reach out to your respective congressmen and 2 senators and just ask them, to support the bill. I'm happy to report in March we got 3 new senators just came on. Martha Blackburn, who I worked with her office directly, and it was 2 others, Daines out of Montana. We already have Tuberville out of Alabama. We have 3 committee members, which is very strong. And I think we can do this with a concerted effort. And if people put a little pressure on their congressmen and senators, there's an 800 number where you can leave a message or speak with staff people. It's 800-224-3121. And you can just leave a message or call. The most effective thing, obviously, is face-to-face, but emails work as well. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not going to send an email. It's 1 email. It's not going to make a difference. Well, congressmen look at emails, just like they do all communication, as a percentage of the population. So they'll see your email as hundreds or maybe thousands of constituents, and it can have a big impact. So we've got a lot more work to do, but we can get this done if we work, in a concerted effort. And again, I want to thank Sarah and the whole organization for going after adverse reaction, drug adverse reactions, because it's destroying our country, our families from within. And I'm hoping written consent can help expose them for what they really are. And I think it will. And then, we need to look then at a differential diagnosis to look at what's the real source of people's problems, nutritional, hormonal, chemical. They all cause the same symptoms as they're treating and saying are that may be the side effects of the drugs. So long way to go, but I think I took up my 2 minutes. So there you go.
Yeah, John, no, thank you so much for your work. I think that's the most common thing we hear from people is, I didn't know that was a side effect. And what you just described, I think, is the number one most actionable step we could take, is setting an expectation that we're going to document informed consent and be consistent in the information that we're providing to make sure that people understand what the risks are and also what they should report if they do decide to take the medications before it escalates. If it becomes.
I was going to say it directly addresses suicides, because if the veterans are not told that the first side effect on the high-risk meds, and we've got 5 classifications: antidepressants, antipsychotics, stimulants, anxiolytics, and narcotics. First side effect is suicide. If the veteran doesn't know that, then he may think he's broken and take his life as a result, because he may think he's not worthy. Maybe he just had an upset with a spouse or lost a job, and that it's really ultimate betrayal that they're not told this. So if a doctor briefs them on it, then at least if they have that suicide or homicidal inclination or hallucinations, these are some of the side effects, they could at least reflect on that and maybe get in touch with someone like their doctor or anyone else to discuss the issue, providing a buffer before they take drastic action.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, John. Thank you so much. And lastly, I want to turn it over to Tammy for some updates.
Well, I held it flat down, but clearly this has gone way beyond everything we were talking about. I do think many of these events are I don't know.
Sheree Gadd,
Farmer's not gonna like that.
Sheree Gadd, who spoke earlier, she had some of her daughter's DNA and was able to submit it, and she did run her sample through a pharmacogenomic sample. She's up now, but she found that her daughter couldn't properly metabolize Prozac.
So again, those are things that we can do proactively. We just talked a lot about the big release of the dietary guidelines and talking about how important diet is. And there are genes we can use, there are blood tests we can use just to see what else is affecting those serotonin levels. Since 80% of our serotonin is in our gut, if we're eating something that's causing inflammation, or we've got infections in our intestines that are, or we're getting exposed to a lot of pesticides and herbicides, like all of us, maybe our serotonin production is way down. And so there are some actionable things that we should include in our plan as we go over that are lower hanging fruit, I think. And it's not always easy to change your diet, but if it means not having as much anxiety or depression, many people will. And I think I've seen that over and over. People come into me with headaches. I figure out what foods they're eating that it could be causing that inflammation. And then they come back and say, boy, of all things, all my anxiety is better and I'm sleeping better. So all this inflammation goes together. That's what I was saying.
Underlying cause.
Underlying cause, yeah.
All right, let's hear from Sheree, Michelle, and then if Omar or John, you have a couple close comments. Go ahead, Sheree.
I just wanted to share that gene site testing has been created in 2006 by the Cleveland Clinic and the Mayo Clinic, and doctors do not volunteer this information to give people this option. And I mean, this is one of the reasons I'm sitting here today, because I warned these doctors that she didn't like how they felt, and they should have not ignored me, and they should have offered this gene site testing. It's been around for 20 years. I don't understand why it's not being offered. It's not something that's new. And like Derek said, I had forensics do a testing on London's DNA, and she did not
So I wanted
metabolize
to
Prozac.
comment on that because I'm with her. The testing's been around for 20 years. It really facilitates the process of getting the person on a med that is not making them worse and leading to an adverse event. I believe that insurance ought to cover it. I also believe the standard of care ought to be to do that test in advance of placing anyone, child, teen, adult, on any kind of a psychotropic. Because what is the harm? What is the harm of a test that is $300 that tells you how you metabolize drugs and tells you which drugs you are going to have greater difficulty metabolizing? I've had doctors say to me, I don't believe in that test. And I kind of feel like saying, well, that's kind of like saying I don't believe in the sun or I don't believe in rain. I mean, it's there and it happens. We know that medications each medication is broken down in a particular pathway in the body or pathways. If in me, for example, with all my multitudinous genetic mutations, if my CPXA12, I'm making it up, pathway is screwed up and I cannot properly metabolize medications that go through that pathway, then I would really prefer that I not be given those drugs, whether they are sedatives, hypnotics, anxiolytics, antidepressants, anti-seizure meds. I would much rather, if I'm going to take one of those drugs, could we have it off of my A list where it's going through maybe the one pathway in my body that isn't screwed up? So I'm with her. I do not see the downside. It would save hundreds of thousands of dollars because you figure that each person who has an adverse medical event and lives is going to go get treatment. They're in the ER, which is expensive. They might be inpatient. They could be inpatient in a psych hospital for a while if it's a psychiatric med. That is way more money than the $300 out of pocket. So what's the problem with covering it? In that it will help not only from a financial sense, but it will save people from the devastating consequences of having what Danielle had, of having what Bob Schwartz had, of having, I forget the name of the mom we just heard, whose daughter is no longer alive, died at 12, and it was later discovered she can't metabolize Prozac. So if we'd done a $300 test, that lady could have her daughter alive as a 14-year-old now, and because of that, that doesn't get to happen. There's no do-over.
And Leanne says it's like people are not able to methylate properly. It's crucial.
And so Leanne is talking about methylation because she knows her stuff. And I bet a lot of people on here have not heard the word. And I bet at least half of the people who have not heard the word are not methylating properly. And the reason I say that is because methylation defects are present in 50% of the population and an even higher percentage of people who have chronic depression. And methylation defects are present in, I want to say like 98.9 or something percent of autistic children. So the methylation defects prevent a person from methylating, which is way too complicated for me to explain, but it's a process that happens all over the body in every organ and system of the body. I'm going to say like thousands of times every second. It's crucial. You don't methylate. For one thing, you're not happy up here. You're probably going to go south with depression and anxiety. You're also not happy in that your toxins are building up, at which point you will get symptoms. Now, yours might be migraine headaches, mine might be rheumatoid arthritis, and the guy down the street might have something else. But if you have too many toxins, things are not going to go smoothly. And there's an entire book, trying to remember, Sherry Rogers. She's actually written a series of them. She's wonderful. And she's a physician. She herself was sick with multiple chemical sensitivity syndrome, which basically is fancy speak for you guys are fine in the room with the perfume, and I'm not. I get the headache, as well as from the cleaning products, as well as from, all the other things. And her thing is, I don't care what your label is, whether you were overseas in a war and you came back and you were exposed to Agent Orange, or you were exposed to, you have Gulf War syndrome, or you have sick building syndrome, or you have mold toxin illness, whatever it is that ails you. She worries less about what your label is and more about, could we help this person detoxify? At which point their symptoms will improve. They may not go all the way away, depending on what other dysfunctions are present, but things are going to get better. So everybody go get an infrared sauna. It can be far or near or both. Everybody get some binders, which is so simple, over the counter, inexpensive, activated charcoal, bentonite clay, fulvic acid, humic acid. These things are very easily obtainable over Amazon, in a health food store, vitamin shop, wherever else people source those things, and they bind toxins. So different binders bind different toxins. Some are better with heavy metals, some are better with mold toxins, some are better with, I don't know. So just take them all and see if you feel better. If you can't afford functional medicine.
Psyllium House, bentonite clay, right? Psyllium House.
Bentonite clay, absolutely.
bentonite
And the
clay.
only contraindication that I know of is do not take your binders near any medications or supplements that you want to get the benefit from, because they bind everything, the good, the bad, and the neutral, and then you excrete, you eliminate. So take them apart, 2 to 3 hours apart. I will tell you, for me, it was life-changing. All of a sudden the fog cleared. I could think. I was like, wow, like who knew? The kids would say, Mom, drink your mud. And I'd be like, right, need to drink the mud. Then I'll feel better.
It looks like they're about to end the presentation here. Let's see what they're saying.
Following up with the next steps. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Sure. Big thanks to you, Jacob, over here, for organizing, putting this together. Yeah, I've been on this journey with you for about 3 years. And it's spectacular. I see big things happening on March 24th every year.
And save the date, March 24th for next year.
This session is happening with them.
All right. So this meeting has ended, but Susan, we're still live, and we'll just get the last few comments in here. Very concerning with pregnant moms, folate deficiencies connected to autism, like you mentioned.
All right, so here's what I have to say about folate. Don't take folate, just take methylfolate. The reason is half the population can process and absorb folate or folic acid, which is what is typically in prenatal vitamins, just fine, no problem. The other half, like me with the methylation defects, can't. It is not going to hurt the individuals who can process folic acid to give them their folic acid in the form of methylated folic acid, otherwise known as methylfolate. It's just the broken down version. So it's not going to hurt them, but it's going to help the 50% of the population who can't. Not only can they not get the benefit from the folic acid, but if you take folic acid when you can't break it down, it leads to high levels of homocysteine in the body, which is linked with something problematic. I want to say cardiac issues, but I can't quite remember. Liam, you might know that one, or no?
Leanne responds, that's what I meant saying methylfolate.
Right, just take methylfolate. Go on Amazon, type in methylated B vitamins, and it should pop up. And they usually have in there combos. You want B12 in there too. B12 and methylfolate they like to be very good friends. They synergize. Each one needs the other to become biologically active. This is also sold in a prescription form, which I think is highway robbery, under the trade name Deplin, which a fancy pharma workaround is to bill it as a medical food so that they can charge a whole lot of money for it and get the insurance companies to pay for it. It is the only active ingredients in it are methylfolate and vitamin B12 that you can get over the counter. And while we're on the B12 subject, if you're not feeling any improvement in your energy level, go get a B12 injection. The absorption is different, and that can be transformative, even if the oral is not well absorbed, the sublingual is not well absorbed. An injection is going to be better. And then your other option, which is probably the top of the line, is go get an IV. And that is less difficult to do than you would think. You want to look for the wellness spas or boutiques in your area that usually offer a range of things like cryotherapy, which is great for reducing inflammation and pain. It also increases norepinephrine, which means there's an antidepressant effect. They offer red light therapy, which also reduces inflammation. It increases mitochondrial function. For the vain among us, it reduces fine lines and wrinkles and so forth. What else do they offer? They offer IVs. And you just go in and say, hit me up, whatever you want. Glutathione is a good one to put in your IV because that's the body's natural detoxifier. So it's the synthetic version of what we all have in our bodies already. But if you are like me and you don't detoxify well, a little extra boost of glutathione is going to help things along. And I would argue, I don't have data, just common sense, it's reducing your chances of all the things down the line. Your cancer, your dementia, your Parkinson's, your whatever, because you're getting rid of the toxins. What else, Liam? What else do we want to say?
I think that's about it. I think it was a really informative conference. I really loved your color commentary. It was good to get sort of a broad view and then for you to drill down and be more specific. I think that was really beneficial. I'd like to thank all the people who tuned in and all the people who commented.
Especially Leanne.
Especially Leanne. Yes, thank you so much. Live broadcast plus vibrant engagement is the Super Bowl of internet broadcasting. So we did some good work here today, I think. All right, Susan, anything else you'd like to say?
Just that Liam is known as the king of LinkedIn. He is the king because his simulcasts for live streams, broadcasts, whatever we're calling them, get upwards of 7,000 or 8,000 engagements. And yes. I'm on a mission to get Liam to dress as a king should. If you notice, he has absolutely nothing on the top of his head. And I think that if you are a king, unofficial or official, you should be wearing your crown.
Yes, I think so too. Last few comments. Glutathione is very expensive, so I always recommend the precursor.
NAC and acetylcysteine. And acetylcysteine is good stuff. It might be different in Canada. I don't feel like glutathione is super expensive, but it could be a difference in countries. I don't know.
Leanne says, right up her alley, and she says, "The king," laughing out loud.
I can tell Leanne and I would have fun. Leanne and I, it would be like an 8-hour talkathon of who could out-talk the other.
Awesome. All right, this has been a fantastic 6 hours altogether. I think that should deserve some hand claps if I could find them. I think right here. 6 hours of
6 hours, baby.
6 hours. We did it. Alrighty, Susan, this was an absolute blast. Thank you so much. And
thank you, Liam. Truly appreciate it.
We'll probably do this again sometime.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to it. How's tomorrow at 9? No, just kidding.
There you go. Let's do it. All right. Thanks
All right,
again. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.